My husband and his beloved mistress were involved in a car accident and were sent to the hospital where I work. Both required immediate surgery, but there was only one operating room available, and I was the only surgeon capable of performing the procedures. My mother-in-law knelt on the ground begging me, "Grace, please save Jason first. He is your husband." The mistress's parents also cried out, "Please save our daughter, she is still young." My husband Jason looked at me weakly, his eyes filled with plea, "Wife, save me." I looked at them and then at the golden retriever that had also been brought in, with one leg broken in the accident. Then, I calmly said to the nurse, "Prepare for surgery, save the dog first." The entire room fell into dead silence. My mother-in-law jumped up and pointed at me, cursing, "You're insane. You're mad. For a dog, you're abandoning your own husband?" I looked at her coldly. "That's right, because in my eyes, he is worth less than a dog." The shadowless lamps in the operating room were cold and glaring. My mother-in-law's screams nearly penetrated through 2 layers of isolation doors. "Grace! You venomous woman! You'll die a horrible death. If anything happens to my son, I'll haunt you even as a ghost." I turned a deaf ear, focusing my gaze on the operating table. It was a beautiful adult golden retriever, now covered in blood, with one hind leg twisted at a bizarre angle, exposing the bone fragments. It was in great pain, whimpering from its throat, but those brown eyes looked at me with pure trust and supplication. "Blood pressure is dropping, prepare for transfusion." I issued the command calmly. "Dr. Grace." The assistant nurse beside me whispered, her voice trembling, "Outside, it's about to turn into a fight. Focus." I uttered 2 words, my hand holding the scalpel steady without a single tremor. I knew what the scene outside was like. My husband Jason and the mistress Vivian, 2 blood-soaked figures on mobile hospital beds. My mother-in-law May, and the bi-family couple, the mistress's parents, 3 faces twisted with despair and anger. There were also the hospital security guards, being pulled and tugged by them, struggling to maintain order. A shocking human tragedy was unfolding outside my operating room. And I, the central female protagonist of this tragedy, was performing surgery on a dog. It was absurd, wasn't it? But only I knew that this was the most correct decision I had made in my 2 lifetimes. In my previous life, it was the same scene. The same car accident, the same 3 injured individuals sent before me. Jason had a ruptured spleen and internal bleeding. Vivian had intracranial hemorrhage, equally critical. The only difference was that in the previous life, there was no golden retriever. I had only 2 choices, save my husband or save his lover. My mother-in-law knelt before me, hugging my legs, smearing snot and tears all over me. "Grace, Jason is your husband, you're a couple. You can't let him die. That little slut Vivian deserves to die if she does, you must save Jason first." Jason lay on the hospital bed, barely breathing. He looked at me and called out, "Wife." Just that one wife shattered my defenses. I had loved Jason for 10 years. From university to marriage, I thought we were a match made in heaven. Until half a year ago, when Vivian appeared. She was Jason's junior from university, also his long-hidden white moonlight. As soon as she returned to the country, Jason's soul followed her. I knew they were together, my heart ached as if repeatedly cut by knives. But I still loved him. I couldn't bear to let him die. So, I chose to save him. I exhausted all my lifelong knowledge, spending a full 8 hours to pull him back from the gates of hell. By the end of the surgery, I was nearly collapsed from exhaustion. But in my heart, I was relieved. I felt I had preserved my family. I thought when he woke up, he would be grateful and reconcile with me. But what I awaited was torment worse than death. Forceps. My voice pulled my thoughts back from the hellish memories. The assistant immediately handed them over. The golden retriever's broken bone had been successfully reset by me, next was suturing. My hands were steady, my mind calm. The noise outside the operating room seemed isolated in another world. In the previous life, I saved Jason. But upon waking, the first news he heard was that Vivian had died in the adjacent operating room due to delayed rescue. At that moment, the look in his eyes was unforgettable. No gratitude, no relief. Only cold, bone-deep resentment. "Grace, why didn't you save her?" he asked hoarsely, each word like poisoned ice. I was stunned and explained, "There was only one operating room at the time, So you let her die?" He suddenly pulled out the needle from his hand, glaring at me with bloodshot eyes. "It was you. You deliberately delayed. You killed Vivian." He struggled to get out of bed. Mother-in-law May quickly held him. "Son. Don't get agitated. The doctor said you've just escaped danger." While comforting Jason, she turned back to glare at me. "Grace. What are you still standing there for? Get out. Seeing you brings bad luck. If it weren't for you, this harbinger of doom, how could my son have had an accident? And how could that vixen have died?" I was pushed out of the ward by her, falling embarrassingly to the ground. The door slammed shut behind me with a bang. I heard Jason roaring madly inside, heard my mother-in-law crying and shouting. They were like a close-knit family, while I was a heinous outsider. From that day on, my hell began. Jason survived, but he blamed Vivian's death entirely on me. He started tormenting me in various ways. He would come home drunk in the middle of the night, choking my neck, forcing me to answer, "Why are you still alive? The one who should die is you." He would enlarge Vivian's photos and hang them in our bedroom. Every morning, the first thing I saw upon opening my eyes was her gentle smiling face. And Jason would point at the photo and say to me, "Grace, look at her, you can't even compare to a single strand of her hair." My mother-in-law intensified her actions. She cursed me as a murderer, a barren hen. She dumped my food, cut my clothes to shreds, and even encouraged Jason to find other women outside. "Anyway, you can't bear children, the Chen family can't be without heirs." The entire home was filled with malice and abuse toward me. I became a prisoner trapped in a cage. The day-to-day torment led me to develop severe depression. I began suffering from insomnia all night, losing hair in handfuls, and becoming emaciated. Finally, on a snowy night, Jason got drunk again because of Vivian's death anniversary. He smashed everything in the house, then rushed at me with red eyes and slapped me hard. "Grace, go die. Go pay for Vivian's life with yours." At that moment, looking at his ferocious face, I suddenly laughed. Yes, why shouldn't I die? Living was too painful. So, I went to the hospital rooftop and jumped. In the instant my body fell, I saw Jason and my mother-in-law chasing after me. Their faces showed no trace of panic or sorrow, only relief. At that moment, I finally understood. My love, my endurance, my sacrifices were worthless in their eyes. I was a complete joke. "Dr. Grace, suturing complete." The assistant's voice sounded. I came back to my senses, looking at the golden retriever breathing steadily on the table, and let out a soft sigh. "Send it to the observation room, assign someone for 24-hour monitoring." I removed my blood-stained gloves, threw them into the medical waste bin. Then, I opened the operating room door. Reborn back at the crossroads of fate, this time I would not make the same mistake. "Jason, Vivian, your life or death has nothing to do with me." As soon as the door opened, noise and stench assaulted me. Mother-in-law May was the first to rush up, raising her hand to hit me. "You bitch. You finally come out. Where's my son? What have you done to him?" I sidestepped, her slap missed, and she stumbled, nearly falling. Vivian's mother also lunged forward, grabbing my white coat, tears streaming down. "Dr. Grace. I beg you. Save my daughter. She's only 26. Why didn't you save people? You went to save a dog. Do you have no heart?" Reporters swarmed like sharks smelling blood, surrounding me instantly. Countless microphones were thrust at my mouth, flashlights blinding me. "Dr. Grace, why did you choose to save the dog first between two severely injured people and a dog? There are rumors that one of the injured is your husband, and the other is his lover, is that true? Does your choice violate the professional ethics of a doctor?" The questions were sharper and more heart-piercing than the last. I was pushed and shoved, unable to move an inch. May was still screaming relentlessly beside me. Everyone look. It's this venomous woman. To revenge her husband's affair, she disregards human lives. She's a madwoman. A murderer. Grace. If you don't give me an explanation today, I'm not done with you. As she spoke, she lunged at me again with claws bared. The hospital security held her back tightly. The scene was chaotic. Hospital Director William squeezed in, looking distraught. Grace. What on earth is going on? Quickly give everyone an explanation. He looked at me, his eyes full of reproach and disappointment. I knew my career might end today. In the previous life, to preserve this family, for Jason, I endured endless grievances and torment, ultimately losing my life. In this life, I just wanted to live for myself. I looked at these crazed faces before me, accusing me, waiting to see my downfall. I took a deep breath, then spoke calmly into the nearest camera. First, as a doctor, I believe all lives are equal. My voice wasn't loud, but it clearly pierced through all the noise. The entire scene instantly quieted. Everyone looked at me, waiting for what followed. When unable to immediately determine the treatment priority for the two human injured, I chose to treat the most innocent and least controversial life first. Second. I paused, my gaze sweeping over the stunned faces of May and the Bai parents. Those two injured, one is my husband, Jason. The other is his lover, Vivian. I clearly stated their names. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The reporters grew more excited, flashes firing more frequently. They were on their way to a hotel to check in, and due to improper behavior inside the car, the vehicle lost control, causing this accident. Ask me to save them? Sure. The corner of my mouth curled into a cold arc, but may I ask, which one should I save first? Saving my husband would wrong the woman also lying in a pool of blood, on the verge of death. Saving that woman would wrong the title of Mrs. Jason that I still bear. This is a classic trolley problem. And I refuse to make the choice. Why should I, the victim, pay for their mistakes and make this cruel decision? My life is not a multiple-choice question for you to set. As my words fell, the entire corridor was deathly silent. Everyone was stunned by my statement. May's mouth gaped, as if someone had choked her, unable to utter a word. Vivian's parents stood frozen, their faces drained of color. The reporters exchanged glances, seemingly not expecting such an answer from me. Calm, clear, logically perfect. Yet carrying a chilling coldness. Finally, a young female reporter raised her microphone tremblingly. So, do you mean you abandoned the treatment of your husband and Miss Vivian? I looked at her and said word by word. No, I did not abandon them. I have already notified the hospital to urgently dispatch doctors from other departments for support. However, I shifted tone, my cold gaze shooting toward May, who was still tugging at the security. Due to certain family members' unreasonable disturbances, loud noises, and the media friends' encirclement, the hospital's normal order has been severely disrupted, obstructing the rescue pathways. The optimal rescue time may have been delayed by you all. My words exploded like a bomb in the crowd. May's face turned ashen instantly. She pointed at me, lips trembling, but couldn't say a complete sentence for a long time. You're slandering. Vivian's father reacted, turning sharply to May, his eyes red as if bleeding. It's you. It's all you, you old shrew. You've been throwing tantrums here since earlier, it's you who harmed my daughter. If anything happens to my daughter, I'll fight your Chin family to the death. Vivian's mother also cried and lunged at May. Give me back my daughter's life. The two families, united in enmity just moments ago, instantly started fighting. May was no pushover, she dodged while shrieking curses. Bullshit. If your daughter hadn't shamelessly seduced my son, how could this happen? She's a vixen. A jinx. She deserves to die. Dare touch me and see. I'll make your whole family suffer. The scene spiraled out of control again. Security scrambled to separate them, while reporters excitedly aimed their cameras at this new farce. No one paid attention to me anymore. I retreated to the side amid the chaos, leaning against the cold wall, watching coldly. How ridiculous. In the previous life, they were like this too, but the target of curses and attacks was me. Now, I just handed over the choice, and they started biting each other. Director William hurried over, accompanied by several rushed doctors. Quick! Move aside. Don't block the way. He directed the security, finally clearing a path through the fighting crowd, pushing Jason and Vivian's beds into different operating rooms. The corridor finally quieted somewhat. Only May and the by-parents remained tearing at each other and cursing. Director William wiped the sweat from his forehead, walked to me, looking at me with a complex expression. Grace, you, sigh. He sighed heavily, wanting to say something but not knowing where to start. Director, I will submit my resignation. I said calmly. After such an incident, I couldn't stay in this hospital anymore. Director William was stunned for a moment, then smiled bitterly. Don't rush to decide. Today's incident has blown up too big. He pointed to my phone. See for yourself. I unlocked the screen and found dozens of missed calls and hundreds of unread messages. I opened the news app, and the first push notification was my statement in the corridor just now. The headlines were more sensational than the last. Shocking. Beautiful doctor's husband cheats, refuses rescue after accident, chooses to save dog first. I refuse to choose. The year's most cold-blooded statement. Is it the fall of humanity or the distortion of morality? Mistress intervenes, wife retaliates, an ethical debate sparked by a car accident. The video had been edited, with inflammatory music and subtitles. My phrase "I refuse to choose" was repeatedly played in large font. The comment section had exploded. This woman is crazy, right? Those are 2 human lives. Just because her husband cheated, she can let them die? Too terrifying. The most venomous is a woman's heart. How did such a person become a doctor? Must investigate strictly. The saints above shut up. If you were her, what would you do? Save the husband? Or the mistress? This is an unsolvable problem. I refuse to choose, said so well. Why make the victim choose? The scumbag and mistress brought it on themselves, and the doctor has to take the blame? Doctor sister is awesome. Saving the dog first, no problem. Dogs are much more loyal than scumbags. Public opinion instantly polarized. Those cursing me and those supporting me argued fiercely in the comments. My name, Grace, shot to the top of the trending list within just 1 hour. I became the focal point of discussion across the entire internet, a cold-blooded, ruthless villainess, a clear-headed, independent, strong female lead. My phone vibrated non-stop, with new messages and calls flooding in. Friends sent concerns, colleagues questions, and many unknown numbers sent vile abusive texts. I turned off the phone, and the world instantly became quiet. Director William looked at me, hesitant. Grace, I know you're aggrieved. But, your approach was too extreme. Now the whole internet is discussing you. The hospital is under great pressure. I understand. I interrupted him. I'll bear all consequences alone. With that, I turned toward the changing room. The white coat was tugged, wrinkled, stained with tears from the by-woman. I took it off and threw it into the trash bin. Along with my pathetic and ridiculous previous life. I sat in the hospital lounge the entire night. Outside the window, the sky turned from black to white. A new day began, but my life felt paused, the path ahead uncertain. At 7 a.m., the operating room lights finally went out. Director William walked out exhausted. I stood up and approached. How's the situation? Director William glanced at me, his expression complex. Lives are saved. He paused, his voice sinking. But Jason, due to the family disturbance delaying time, brain hypoxia exceeded 8 minutes. Although rescued, but became a vegetable. My heart had no ripple. This outcome was within my expectations. In the previous life, I desperately saved him, letting him wake up intact. And the result? He spent the rest of his life tormenting and resenting me. A vegetable? Perhaps this was the best punishment for him. Let him live forever in that dream with Vivian, unable to harm anyone anymore. And Vivian? I asked. High-level paraplegia. Director Williams sighed, no sensation below the chest. The rest of her life in a wheelchair. How fitting. In the previous life, she died, becoming Jason's eternal white moonlight, cinnabar mole. In this life, she lived but became an invalid needing care. I wonder if, when Jason's family and hers argued endlessly over who would care for this mess, she would regret her initial choice. Sigh, 2 young lives ruined just like that. Director William lamented deeply. They reaped what they sowed. I said coldly. If they hadn't fooled around in a speeding car, if they had taken some responsibility for their families, this wouldn't have happened. Director William opened his mouth but ultimately said nothing more. What do you plan next? Resign, divorce. My answer was straightforward. Director William was silent for a moment, then nodded. That's good. You're still young, leave here, change cities, start anew. He probably thought my life was ruined. Career, family, reputation, gone overnight. But only I knew. My life was just beginning. At that moment, a middle-aged man in a suit, with an elegant demeanor, carrying a fruit basket, entered the lounge. He walked straight to me and bowed deeply. Dr. Grace, thank you. I looked at him puzzled. Who are you? I'm the owner of yesterday's golden retriever, my name is Ethan. The man smiled, I heard about what happened yesterday. Really, thank you so much. If not for you, my Lucky might have. His eyes reddened. It's the only memento my daughter left me. I then understood. No need to thank, it's what I should do as a doctor. No, this is different. Mr. Ethan's expression was serious, I know how much pressure you bore for this. I saw the news online and your statement. He looked at me, eyes full of admiration and respect. Dr. Grace, you are a remarkable woman. I'm a partner at a law firm. He handed me a business card, if you need anything, contact me anytime. For all your legal issues, I'm willing to provide free consultation and assistance. I looked at the card, top lawyer, Ethan, my heart stirred. The city's largest law firm, chief partner. I was worrying about how to handle the divorce and defamation lawsuits. This was like a pillow scent when drowsy. Thank you, lawyer Ethan. I accepted the card, I do need your help. Fate's gears quietly shifted at this moment. In the previous life, I saved people but was treated as an enemy, ultimately dying miserably. In this life, I saved a dog and unexpectedly gained a lifeline for myself. I handled the resignation procedures at the fastest speed. Director William tried to retain me repeatedly, but I refused. This hospital carried too much of my blood and tears, I didn't want to stay a second longer. The day I left the hospital, the weather was fine. Sunlight warmed my body. I felt as if in another world. Lawyer Ethan's efficiency was high. The day after my resignation, he brought his team and formally signed the entrustment agreement with me. The first step was to sue for divorce. When I handed the divorce complaint to mother-in-law May, she was sitting in the hospital corridor, gnawing an apple while on the phone. Oh, don't mention it. That daughter-in-law of mine is a jinx. She harmed my son into a vegetable. Now, that little vixen is paralyzed too, clinging to our family. How unlucky am I? Seeing me, she was stunned first, then hurled the apple core at me. You still have the face to come. Get out. I dodged the core and handed the document to her. Ms. May, this is Jason's divorce complaint, please sign as his legal guardian. May saw the words clearly, her eyes bulging. Divorce? Dream on. She snatched the document and tore it to shreds. Grace, I tell you. My son is like this because of you. You want to divorce and abandon this mess? No way. You'll serve him for life. Be his ox and horse to atone. She cursed like a madwoman, pointing at my nose. I looked at her as if watching a clown. First, Jason became a vegetable because of your unreasonable disturbances delaying the best rescue time. The hospital has surveillance as proof. Second, according to marriage law, if one spouse's infidelity causes marital breakdown, the innocent party has the right to divorce and demand compensation from the at-fault party. Third, what you have is a copy, tearing it is useless. The court summons will soon be mailed to your home. With each sentence I said, May's face paled further. In the end, she trembled with anger, pointing you for a long time, unable to say a word. Oh, right. I added, we will also sue to divide marital property. By law, as the at-fault party, Jason must leave with nothing. What? May screamed, no way. The house is mine. The car too. You won't take a penny. The house and car are under Jason and my name's marital property. I took out my phone, played a recording. Jason's voice came out. Wife, this house is in both our names, this will be our forever home. This car is a gift for you, from now on, I'm your exclusive driver. These sweet words that once moved me now became the strongest evidence. May's face turned completely ashen. She slumped to the ground, eyes vacant, muttering. Gone, all gone. I looked at her dejected state, feeling no pity. This was all she deserved. In the previous life, she conspired with Jason to drive me to despair. In this life, I was merely repaying in kind. I turned and left, not glancing back. Behind me came her shrill wails. Grace! You vicious woman! You'll get retribution. Retribution? Mine ended in the previous life. Now, it's your turn. The progress was smoother than I imagined. Lawyer Ethan's team was invincible. They collected all evidence of Jason's marital infidelity, including but not limited to hotel records, transfer records, and the dashcam footage from the accident car, capturing unsightly scenes. When the evidence was presented in court, Jason's lawyers had no room to refute. The judge ruled on the spot. Divorce granted. All post-marital property, vehicles, deposits, and investments under Jason's name went to me. I got the judgment and walked out of court. May and some of Jason's relatives blocked the door. She rushed like an enraged lioness to tear me apart. Grace! Give back our family's money. You robber! Lawyer Ethan and his tall assistant stepped forward, shielding me. Ms. May, please calm down. If you have any aggressive behavior, we can sue you for assault. Sue you? I want to kill you. May went completely mad, you black-hearted lawyers. Colluding with officials and business. Bullying us common folk. She sat on the ground, throwing a tantrum, wailing. No justice. My son lies half dead in hospital, and this woman runs off with our money. Everyone come see. Look at this venomous woman. Passers-by glanced sideways, pointing at me. I watched her performance expressionlessly. In the previous life, this was what I feared most. Fearing gossip, misunderstanding. So I repeatedly yielded, endured. In return, escalating bullying. Now, I didn't care. At that moment, an ambulance siren blared as it arrived. Medics carried a stretcher, rushing into another nearby court. Then, Vivian's parents followed crying. Your Honor! You must do us justice. Jason's family are scum. They harmed my daughter like this, now refusing to pay medical fees. May's cries stopped abruptly. She got up, looking toward Vivian's family, face full of panic and venom. You, what are you here for? Vivian's father saw her, enemies meeting with red eyes. What are we here for? To sue you. Jason harmed my daughter like this, your Chin family must take full responsibility. Responsible? Why? May jumped up, your daughter was cheap, seducing my son. She deserved it. Bullshit. If your son couldn't control his lower body, would my daughter get in the car with him? The two families staged another brawl at the court door. Lawyer Ethan whispered in my ear, I had someone remind the Bai family to apply for legal aid. Hospital surveillance shows May deliberately obstructed Vivian's treatment after the accident. They have a strong case. Watching this farce, I suddenly found it amusing. This was the family I once desperately protected. This was the man I loved to the bone and his so-called true love. In the end, just dogs biting dogs. And I could finally watch soberly as an outsider, as they headed to their destructions. After the divorce case settled, my life returned to peace. Ethan's team handled the online rumors and abuses against me. They sued dozens of marketing accounts and hundreds of netizens for defamation. Under solid evidence and strong legal pressure, they deleted posts, apologized, and compensated for mental damages. The sensational "Doctor Saves Dog" incident gradually subsided. Though some irrational people still cursed online, more began understanding and supporting my choice. My social accounts gained hundreds of thousands of followers. Many sent private messages sharing their marital betrayals and pains. They said my actions gave them courage to resist. I occasionally replied, loving oneself is the start of lifelong romance. With the divided property, I bought a large apartment in a high-end downtown community. Renovated in a simple, cool style to my taste. On moving day, lawyer Ethan brought his Lucky to congratulate me. The golden retriever had fully recovered, with only a faint scar on its leg. Upon seeing me, it affectionately pounced, rubbing its big head on my leg. Seems it really likes you. Lawyer Ethan smiled. I like it too. I stroked the soft fur, my heart warm. This was my first genuine smile since rebirth. Dr. Grace, what's next? Lawyer Ethan asked. I want to open my own hospital. I voiced my hidden thought. Ethan's eyes lit up. Oh? Good idea. With your fame and skills, no worry about patients. But opening a hospital needs huge funds and complex approvals, I'm afraid. Money's not an issue. I said, I just lack a professional partner. I looked at him meaningfully. Ethan was stunned, then laughed heartily. Dr. Grace, are you inviting me? Yes. I nodded. I believe with your connections and abilities, we'll cooperate well. Honored. Ethan extended his hand, but I have one condition. What condition? After the hospital is built, can Lucky come see you anytime? He pointed to the golden retriever at his feet. Seeing his smile, I laughed too. Of course. It's our VIP client. Our hands clasped. Outside, sunlight perfect, breeze gentle. I knew my life truly turned a new page from this moment. A brand new chapter belonging only to me, Grace. The hospital plan progressed faster than imagined. Ethan, worthy of top lawyer, had astonishing connections. He quickly secured the site, pulled investments, built a professional management team. My dog-saving doctor fame became a golden sign. Many excellent doctors and nurses came admiringly, willing to join. Some were even colleagues from my previous hospital. During interviews, their expressions were unnatural. Director Grace. They still habitually called my old title. Sit. I gestured, personally poured tea. I thought you'd think me cold-blooded, inhuman. I said half-jokingly. A young doctor named Leo flushed. Director, we were blind before. After that day, our department discussed. If it were us, we might not know what to do. You've done well. Another head nurse echoed, yes, Director Grace. Jason and that Vivian, their families are no good. We're happy you escaped the misery. Looking at their sincere faces, I was touched. In the previous life, my relations at hospital weren't good. I put all my mind on Jason and family, seeming indifferent to others. Colleagues thought me aloof, unsociable. Unexpectedly, when I was betrayed by all, these not-so-close colleagues gave me belated understanding. Thank you. I said sincerely. If willing, my hospital welcomes you anytime. My hospital, named New Life. Symbolizing my rebirth, and that all patients here gain new life. Preparations proceeded orderly. The Chan and Bai family's farce entered a heated stage. The Bai's lawsuit against Chen for intentional injury and refusing medical payments went to trial. The hospital surveillance footage, kindly provided by Ethan, became the final straw that broke the Chen family. The recording clearly showed that when Vivian needed emergency treatment most, it was May who stood like a madwoman at the operating room door, screaming and crying, refusing to let anyone enter. Evidence solid. Chen's lost. Court ruled Chen's bear all future treatment and care costs for Vivian, plus one-time $3 million mental damages. This ruling was worse for the Chens, already losing most property to me. I heard May fainted in court that day from anger. Upon waking, she stormed Vivian's ward, causing a scene. She cursed Vivian as a debt collector, vixen, ruining her family. Vivian lay immobile, enduring the curses. When her parents arrived, another massive fight. Finally, all three were escorted out by security. After that, May paid no more medical fees. She played rogue, disappearing. Bays couldn't get money, watching Vivian's condition worsen daily. Due to prolonged bedrest and poor care, large bedsores appeared on her back and legs. Ulcerated, stinking. The once proud beautiful white moonlight became a stinking living dead on the bed. Her parents went from heartache to impatience, finally to numbness and resentment. I occasionally heard about them from ex-colleagues. Vivian's father, unable to bear the torment, started drinking and gambling. Her mother developed depression, crying all day. A once glamorous family was completely dragged down. A year later, my New Life private hospital officially opened. Opening ceremony was packed. Ethan as partner gave an enthusiastic speech. I, as dean, stood beside, accepting congratulations and flashes. Below, my new employees' faces showed aspirations for the future. My partners trusted me fully. Also Ethan's lucky, dressed like a little gentleman with bow tie, squatting front row, grinning, tail wagging like a drum. My gaze swept these kind faces. My heart unprecedentedly peaceful and satisfied. Then, an uninvited guest appeared. It was May. She looked over 20 years older than a year ago. Gray hair, ragged clothes, turbid eyes, like a street vagrant old woman. She carried a black plastic bag emitting sour smell. Security soon spotted her, trying to block outside. But she rushed madly through, straight toward me on stage. Grace! Her shrill voice shattered the festive atmosphere. Everyone was stunned by the sudden change. Why do you live so well? She rushed below stage, pointing at me, eyes full of blood-red venom. You stole our family's money. Opened such a big hospital. Became dean. And me? My son lies waiting to die in hospital. I can't even eat. As she spoke, she opened the bag, pulling out moldy buns. Look. This is what I eat now. Grace. My son was harmed by you. You're a murderer. Give back my money. Give back my healthy son. She hysterically wailed, accusing. Reporters' cameras aimed at me again. They probably thought another big drama was unfolding. Ethan frowned, signaling security to drag her away. I raised my hand to stop him. I took the mic, calmly looking at the mad-like woman below. Ms. May, you seem to have forgotten. My voice clearly spread through the venue via speakers. First, your money was awarded to me by court legally. Because your son cheated in marriage, the at-fault party. Second, your son became a vegetable because you threw tantrums in hospital, delaying rescue. You personally dashed his recovery hope. Third, you can't eat because you didn't comply with court judgment, refusing Vivian's medical fees, listed as dishonest, all assets frozen. Everything you endure now is self-inflicted. My words pierced the heart. May was rendered speechless. She stood stunned, trembling, face alternating pale and flushed. Suddenly, as if remembering, she turned to the crowd, searching. Soon, her gaze locked on a corner. There, a shabby wheelchair. On it sat a withered, distorted-faced woman. It was Vivian. She had come too. Pushed by her parents. They probably heard of my opening and came to cause trouble, extort money. Seeing Vivian, May seemed to find an outlet for all hatred and resentment. She screamed and pounced madly. "It's all you. You bitch. If not for you, my son wouldn't have crashed. Our family wouldn't be like this. You jinx. Die. Die." She choked Vivian's neck with all strength. Vivian slumped in the wheelchair, no strength to struggle. Her face quickly turned liver-colored, eyes rolling back, throat making gurgling sounds. My parents screamed, pulling May, scene chaotic. Security rushed, using great effort to separate them. By then, Vivian foamed at mouth, unconscious. A grand opening ended with a sirening ambulance. I stood on stage, indifferently watching. The farce finally concluded. May was arrested on spot for public intentional injury. I heard Vivian was rescued at hospital, but due to brain hypoxia, her fragile nervous system was devastated, losing consciousness completely, becoming the second vegetable. Vivian's parents collapsed completely. Their only hope was May's severe legal punishment, then getting compensation. Unfortunately, May was penniless, no executable assets. Ultimately, sentenced to 5 years for intentional injury. A once pampered rich lady would spend her old age in cold prison. Her son Jason, after 2 years in hospital, died quietly from multi-organ failure. No relatives by his side at death. Hospital couldn't contact May, finally notified community for hasty cremation. These news from Ethan. By then, my hospital was on track, one of the city's most popular high-end private hospitals. I was busy daily, surgeries, managing hospital, attending medical seminars. No time to follow those people's ends. To me, they were dust from previous life. Occasionally in quiet nights, I'd recall that snowy night. The biting cold wind and boundless despair as I jumped from rooftop. Then, I'd go to the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the city's myriad lights. I knew that desperate grace was dead. Now, I lived better than ever. With my career, like-minded friends, neighbors to mooch meals and pet dog anytime. Oh, right, Ethan became my neighbor. After hospital stabilized, he moved his law firm to the building next to hospital. Ostensibly for handling hospital legal affairs conveniently. Actually, to bring Lucky to my home for meals after work daily. Lucky was now my loyal follower. Wherever I went, it followed. Sometimes when I operated late, it lay at my office door, quietly waiting. When I opened, it wagged tail pouncing, rubbing big head on my hand. Ethan often joked he suspected Lucky forgot who its real owner was. That day, after a 10-hour complex surgery, I dragged my tired body back to office. Opening door, saw Ethan and Lucky. Lucky pounced for routine affection. Ethan handed me warm water. "Hard work. Why are you here?" I took the cup, sipped. "To check if you're dead." Ethan leaned on desk, unserious, "and tell you news." "What?" "May died of illness in prison." My hand holding cup paused. But my heart had no wave. "Oh." I responded faintly, continuing to drink. Ethan looked at me, raised brow. "Just this reaction? What else?" I countered, "What should I do? Shed tears for her, sigh at life's impermanence?" "Not necessary." Ethan smiled, "I just think you're more queen-like now." "Is that so?" I set down the cup, walked to him, gazing into his eyes. "Then great lawyer Ethan, are you willing to be this queen's first subject?" Ethan was stunned. He looked at me, his smile gradually turning into a deep, fervent emotion I'd never seen. The office was quiet. Only Lucky's tail wagged obliviously. After a long while, he chuckled deeply. Then, he knelt on one knee, took my hand, placed a devout kiss on the back. "My queen, serving you is my life's greatest honor." Outside, moonlight like water. I knew my thorny, dark first half-life had ended completely. My second half would be blooming flowers, radiant glory.